Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Java Basics. Today we're going to be talking about operators. No, not machine operators. No, not phone operators. We're talking about Java operators, basic mathematical operations, and then maybe some other ones. If you've missed any episodes in this series, I'm going to put a link to the first episode in the description below so you can catch up on anything you may have missed. If you want to learn Java programming, or just programming in general, subscribe to this channel. We put out a lot of videos that range from beginner topics to more advanced programming concepts. Also, please like this video, share it with a friend, and write a comment as well. It goes a long way to help promote a channel like this. Now, let's get back to the video. Let's take a look at the agenda for today. Basic mathematical operations. How do we concatenate? In other words, we're going to be using an operator, the addition operator, for something other than addition. We'll talk quickly about the order of operations. We'll talk about something called integer division, and finally we'll talk about combined operators. So let's get started. Operators are really special symbols that are used for just basic mathematical calculations. So if x is an integer, these are all legal operations. This is how we add, subtract, multiply, and divide. Notice multiplication is the star, which is the shift 8 key, and division is the slash, which is the slash below the question mark, not the other backslash that you will see on a keyboard. Let's take a look at these in action. So let's create a new Java file. We'll call it Learning Operators, and we'll do our basics. Let's declare a variable called x, and we'll assign x equal to 8. And what we'll do is we will print x plus 1, x minus 1. How about x times 10? And let's do x divided by 2. And let's run. As you can see, here are the outputs. Plus 1, minus 1, times 10, and divided by 2. Now, sometimes if we have other variables, first name equals Mike, let's make another one called last name equals Jones, and we can also print first name plus last name. The plus sign normally would mean addition, but when you're dealing with strings, it means concatenate. And I did touch on this in a prior video. We're just going to take the two strings and put them one next to the other. Let's just run this, see what happens. We get Mike followed by Jones. Now notice there's no space. What we can do is we can concatenate the first name with a space and then concatenate it with the last name. Let's see. And there's our space. Now Java will also allow us to print first name plus our variable. Now when we do this, how does Java know, should we be adding, should we be concatenating, because we have a string and an integer? Well, Java will always go to the more generic one. In other words, if we have a string here, and we try and do the plus operator with an integer, Java will say, well, I can't convert that into an integer, so I'm going to have to convert it into a string. So therefore, I'm going to put this followed by this as a string, so we'll end up with Mike followed by the number 8. There we go, Mike followed by the number 8. Now, we could also say, I'll have another variable, y equals 4, and we could say first name plus x plus y. Now, is Java going to print the first name Mike followed by an 8 followed by a 4? Or is Java going to add these two things together and then concatenate it with Mike? Well, let's see. As you can see, Java did not add them together because Java goes left to right and Java sees a string plus, meaning concatenate, with an integer, so we got to convert this into a string, concatenate with another integer, got to convert this into a string. If you do want Java to add these two together first, you have to put this in parentheses because parentheses will go first. And now we have Mike followed by 12. Now, speaking of parentheses, Java will follow all the normal order of operations, otherwise known as PEMDAS. In case anyone's not familiar, PEMDAS stands for parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. This is the order that Java will execute things in. First, it'll do things in parentheses and exponents and so on. Let's just give it a quick try. We can erase all this test code. And let's just print something like this. 4 plus 5 times 6. Now going left to right, this would be 9 times 6 is 54. But according to the order of operations, we should do 5 times 6 first and then plus 4. Just to double check, we get 34, and that shows you that Java follows the order of operations. Now let's check something else out. What happens if we have an integer called minutes? We'll say that's 59. And then we want to print out the percentage of minutes within an hour. So that would be minutes divided by 60. That should be equal to 0.98333333, and so on. Approximately what this should be equal to. Let's just double check to make sure it works, and oh, we got 0. So does Java not know how to divide? Is that what the issue is? No, obviously. The issue here is that we're using something called integer division. Java takes a look at this calculation, and it tries to figure out what type the answer is going to be. So Java looks at this and says, oh, okay, that variable is an integer. This variable is also an integer. So if we're going to do an operation, whatever it may be, on two integers, the answer is going to be an integer. Now, when Java calculates this, it comes up with 0.983333 and so on, but it now tries to make this an integer. When Java converts a decimal into an integer, it does not round, it truncates. So it chops off all of this, and that's why we end up with the number 0. If you want the actual value, which could be a decimal, we can't use an integer, we have to use a double. And now when we run this, you can see that we get the correct answer because Java looks at this and says, okay, what type is the answer going to be? This is a double, which means it could contain decimals. It does contain decimals. This is an integer. Well, if we operate on a double and an integer, the answer has to be a double because we could have a decimal. Now, just so you know, there is a way to get the correct answer without changing this variable into a double. It's called casting, and that's going to be the topic of a future video. We're not going to get into it here. Let's take a look at a little practice slide. So I have here some code, and I'd like you to pause the video and see if you can figure out which of these statements do you think are problematic. Pause the video, and we'll go over it soon. Okay, so we're back. Let's take a look at each one. So let's look at number 1. Okay, so we know x is 5, y is 3. For number 1, we're saying x plus 1 equals 6. Now in math, that makes sense. True, right? That doesn't seem problematic. But in Java, the equal sign is not a relational equal sign, meaning this side equals that side. The equal sign means assignment. There's a totally different operator that deals with relations, and we'll get to that later on. For now, this equal sign is an assignment, meaning take what's on the right side, 6, and assign it into the variable on this side, x plus 1. But x plus 1 is not a variable. So this will generate an error because it's trying to take the value of 6 and put it into some variable called x plus 1, and that you can't have a variable called x plus 1. Let's take a look at number 2. Number 2 says take the value 17 plus 1, which is 18, and assign it into the variable called x. Again, in math, this would be a false statement. But in Java, this equal sign means assignment. So this is a valid statement, and at the end, x will be equal to 18. It'll replace the value of 5. Let's take a look at 3. Again, in math, this is not a true statement. 5 is not equal to 3, but equal is an assignment. We take the value of y and stick it into the variable x. So at the end of this, x will be equal to 3. So this is a valid statement. Number 4, again, take y, add 1 to it, put the value into x. Good statement. X will be equal to 4. The last one may look a little strange if someone's not used to programming, but this is actually a very common statement. This says, take x, add 1 to it, 6. Take that value of 6, put it back into x. So at the end of this, x will be equal to 6. Now, I'd like to take a look at this statement. This statement's a very common statement. Stuff like this we do in Java all the time. Take a variable and add something to the variable and put it back into the same variable. We basically want to add or subtract or multiply or divide by something and store it back into the same variable. Java has a shortcut. Let's take a look at that shortcut. Let me delete this. We'll say integer x equals 5. We will say x equals x plus 1. And let's print this, print x. And we're just going to run this, make sure it works. We add 1 to it. Great. Now, I said there was a shortcut. The shortcut is typing this, plus equals 1. Semicolon. What plus equals is that's a shortcut way of writing x equals x plus 1, meaning take x, add 1 to it, put the value back into x. And when we run this, we get the same answer, 6. You don't even have to have 1. You can have 8. X plus equals 8, which means add 8 to x, put the answer back into x. Not only can you do this with addition, you can do it with subtraction, -3. You can do it with multiplication. Multiply x by 8, put the answer back into x. You can also do it with divide. Let me get an even number here. Let's use 16. We'll do divide equals 8, meaning we're going to take x, divide it by 8, put the answer back into x. And there you go. Now, x equals x plus 1. Again, that could be written as plus equals 1. Now, I said before that incrementing, adding 1, adding something, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, and putting the answer back into the same variable is very common, so there is this shortcut. Well, adding 1 is even more common. So Java made another shortcut. And the other shortcut on top of this shortcut is plus plus. What this does is this is a very fast way, fast meaning you don't have to type as much, of incrementing x by the value of 1. X plus plus means just take x, whatever the value is, add 1 to it. And we get 17. You can also use minus, minus. And we get 15. Now, just so you know, there are things where you can put the plus plus or the minus minus before the x. That's not a topic of this video. This video is it's just an introductory video to look at operators and combined operators. We'll be getting into putting the plus plus before the x in a future video when we get a little bit more advanced. I hope you learned something from watching this video. Please remember to subscribe and share this video with others who are learning Java programming. Thanks for watching, and take care, everyone.